Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to Monday's edition of your Daily Market Insight video, about 5 minutes after market close here on December 6th, 4:04 p.m. Eastern Time to be exact. And today we've got a big bounce in the indices and equities. We've got some positive reversals on some growth names that were extremely oversold per se. And additionally, we've got a potential changing character in one of the major indices. And we're going to look at all of that good stuff here in just a moment. However, before we do that, let's talk about what just happened, right? Indices bounce led by the Dow and small and mid caps. Okay, so Dow up roughly 2%, mid caps and small caps also both up about 2%. S&P up a little over 1%. Qs up about 4/5 of 1%, and the G5 lagging those today, as you would expect, if the Dow is outperforming, up about 0.5% today. So the performance may give a little bit of a hint as to which one of those might have a potential changing character. We're going to look at that in a second. But before we do, let's talk about the market state and the market trend. We do not have a change to the state. It still stays in a correction. And then in regards to the trend gauge, we do not have any changes today to the short-term, to market leaders, or to the longer midterm. However, we do know that we see the Dow approaching the 50 and the 21. It's very close. And we see the S&P today getting very close to the overhead 21 as well. So we could be seeing possibly this little arrow move to yellow soon. If we get continued positive action to the upside, possibly seeing the S&P and the Dow through the 21, we'd look for the Qs to get there as well, maybe mid caps. Additionally, small caps really are still the big laggard. They're down below the moving averages much more than the other indices are. So no changes to the trend gauge today, no changes to market state either. First, before we get to the charts, as I always do, let me cover Revere really quick. If you have any questions about this video, send me an email, hunter@revereasset.com. If you have any questions about what we do, what our strategy is, you can email me, or you can email anybody here, Dan, Tim, Meryl, Alex, or Don at revereasset.com. So let's get into the charts. And we're going to start here with the S&P. And as you can see, we bounced today, right? Up 1.1, 1.2% roughly. And there is one very key thing today that we did, although it was by just a tiny, tiny little bit. We did close above the 8-day exponential moving average on SPY, right on it on the S&P index itself. However, we were somewhat rejected or stymied at the overhead 21 EMA. So to the upside on the S&P, I would look for a close above 460. We talked about that 460 level being important. So a close above today's high, a close above Friday's high, getting through that 460, 461 area is a big thing, and staying above it is another big thing. So if I saw like another close or two in the next 2 days above the 21, above the 8-day from the S&P, that would be a really big positive sign, especially considering how we've looked at times over the last 4 or 5 days here. So 460, 461, the big level to watch to the upside. Obviously 450, the key area to the downside, as well as that 50-day moving average. But I would watch today's highs as well as Friday's highs. That 460, 461 area seems to be important there on the S&P. The Qs, the 388 level, a little bit of resistance today. It got right up there, right up under 388. I would, this one still is a little bit below the moving averages. You can see the 21 and the 8 are up there around 390. So although we are getting a bounce here off the 50, the Q's lagging in regards to getting back above those declining moving averages, but they also held up better. The Q's held up better for a little bit. So some of that is to be expected, but that's kind of the same way I'm looking at 460 on SPY. I'm looking at 390 on the Q's. Can we get back above, get some closes above there, get the 8-day and the 21-day moving upwards as opposed to downwards. That's what I'm looking for on the Q's. Same situation, 379, 380. I want to see those lows hold. That's the downside level I'm watching. So very quickly here, IWM, small caps, back up into the declining 8-day, not through it, rejected at it more or less, although it's just a little bit off of it. As you can see, that 220 level seems to be pretty important there for small caps. That's what I would look for. Closes above 220, closes above the 8-day exponential will be the first steps towards repairing perhaps that small cap chart there. MDY, sorry. The next one we're going to look at, I mentioned it looked pretty similar to the S&Ps. As you can see, back above the 8 just by the skin of its teeth here on MDY. Not quite able to get back above this 50 and 21 area, as you can see, right around 508, 509, call it there. So that's the area to watch for the mid caps up into these moving averages. As you can see, the 50 and 21 converging overhead there. And then to the downside, obviously, we want to watch this 200-day, the moving average right below, same situation that we had with the Dow up until today, and then the lows from the last couple of days. And then lastly, this is the index that might be experiencing a change in character. So the only index today that had a significant definitive move well above the 8-day exponential moving average, not closing right on it, closing a significant bit above it. So DIA, the Dow Jones Industrial Average, getting back above the 8-day, right back into this 21-day and 50 area. Okay, so that's right at 353. So it actually closed just a teeny little bit below. But today's high slash that 353 area, that's where you want to watch. I would say a close above 353 or above today's high would be really bullish or positive for DIA. Conversely, I'm watching the lows of today on DIA, watching to see if it gets rejected at these overhead moving averages. So to quickly sum that up on really the S&P, the Qs, the Dow, that's the big three, obviously small caps and mid caps too. But what I'm looking for as we're pushing back up into these declining moving averages is, do they fail there and ultimately get rejected, or can they get above and get some closes above those moving averages? So we're just really at a pivotal point here on the indices in regards to, are we going to fail and come back lower, or are we going to push through and continue higher? So before we get to individual stocks quickly, TLT, you can see pulling back today. This has been a sign of the flight to safety, right? Risk on stocks have been getting hit, and this is kind of the flight to safety, the treasuries. So TLT down today, some of the risk on stuff doing well, and still above the 8-day. So I keep your eye on TLT. This is an interesting chart. It was a breakout on Friday, kind of retesting that today. We'll see if it ends up falling apart or holding. Now let's look at some stuff that was strong today. Apple up about 2.5%, has been one of the strongest stocks in the market amidst this pull off, the strongest stock in the market really amidst the pull back. Apple staying above the 8-day exponential moving average here. That's something to watch, is if Apple begins to break down, does that begin to impact the indices? Or does it hold up and we recover on the indices as well? But something to watch on Apple. I'd keep an eye on the 8-day exponential moving average in the 21 there for Apple. Amazon also having a nice day with some of the other big tech stocks, Facebook and Netflix too. These have been sold off pretty bad. These aren't the best looking charts, but they were up nicely today. Builder, BLDR, we talked about this one on Friday with the 21 over 21. The home builder group, very strong / materials group. So BLDR, very strong. DAI or DHI, DR Horton, very strong today as well. ITB, the ETF, looking good. So this is one of the strongest and one of the areas that's actually held up very well in the market at the current time. Additionally, we saw XOP, the oil and gas exploration ETF, have a nice day today. Some of these stocks actually don't look awful in here, FANG and DVN in particular. But like you just saw when I pulled up the XOP ETF, the ETF does not look great, I would say, kind of still struggling with that declining 8 there. So, but nonetheless, a strong day for this ETF and for oil and gas stocks today. We also saw banks have a good day, KRE up about 3% or so, but back up into these moving averages. It's a recurring theme. I'm highlighting the strength here, but I want you to pay attention to a lot of these are rallies up into moving averages that are overhead. So some pivotal points for not only the indices, but sectors as well. Jets, the travel ETF, right? The airlines, that kind of thing. Big move up into the declining 21, pulled back off of it today, but nonetheless, back above the 8-day, right? You can see how this is kind of constituting this trend for a while, back above the 8-day for the time being. We'll see if there's any legs to it. Some positive reversals. I know I mentioned that in the beginning. Affirm, big time reversal from 96 up to 115. Very, very sharp sell-off, as you can see, but for the time being, a sharp reversal up today, showing some relative strength. Airbnb, similar type of story here, very sold off, as you can see, from 212 to 160, but back above all the major moving averages. Not necessarily the healthiest charts, healthiest action I'm showing you here, But I do want to highlight these positive action or positive reversals and big moves from some of these growth stocks that took a big hit. And then Tesla, even a mega cap name, slicing down under the 50-day back through that 1,000 level, but ultimately reclaiming by the end of the day, getting back above 1,000 in the 50-day. So some positive action as the day went on, even though there was some ugly opens. And then lastly, just to highlight some of those better looking sectors at the moment, the transportation ETF getting back above the 21, just like the Dow. XLRE, this one has held up pretty well given the action, one of the stronger names today. And then XLI, the industrials, similarly looks kind of like DIA, getting back close to or above the 21. So positive action on those names today. Some of the not so pretty ones, NVIDIA actually opened up down almost 10%, came all the way back up to this 300 level after a news headline came out this morning about them. So a news-driven sell-off, but nonetheless, quite a recovery. It's still weak on the day, along with pretty much most chip makers or chip stocks. AMD, same kind of thing, was down 6-7% earlier this morning, finished the day down 3.5%. We also saw the cybersecurity space continue to get hammered. Just an unbelievable sell-off here in Zscaler. Zscaler from 370 to 270 in a matter of about 4 days. We saw this weakness trickle over to Fortinet. We saw it trickle over into CrowdStrike. So these cybersecurity names really just cannot catch a break at the moment. Cryptocurrency had a big sell-off over the weekend, about a 20% sell-off in Bitcoin and Ethereum in a very short period of time. They have recovered from those lows, up about 10% or so off those lows, if I'm not mistaken, at the moment. But nonetheless, bad day for crypto today. However, recovering off the lows from the weekend. Moderna and BNTX initially had spiked up, starting around the end of or beginning of last week-ish, and then have now pulled back, or peaking around the beginning of last week, excuse me. Now pulled back very sharply. BioNTech is the other, also similar looking chart. And then lastly, another weak one here, Lulu down 3%, rejected at that 50-day. So plenty of broken charts out there, even some of those big leaders starting to crack. However, we do see the indices making a comeback and a rally attempt today. You can't argue with that. Now looking for S&P to get back above 460, the Qs to get back above 390, possible for some more possible confirmation or further evidence that the strength might be sustained. So that's kind of what I'm watching today, everybody. That's what I'm looking at. So thank you for all tuning in. Like I said, if you have questions, send me an email. But otherwise, I will see you on Thursday's video and this week's podcast. So have a great week, everybody.